Am I wearing a branded hat? I can't.
Are you?
Good Boy Vodka. Hey, shout out to the boys at Good Boy Vodka. Hat, but I'm not going to give free advertising. So now you get to see the bald head. One of the things I've always admired about you, Tom, is your head of hair. When Tom and I met, Sean, I had just as much hair as Tom has now.
Okay.
And things happened. Gentlemen, welcome to BeerNet Radio. This is the podcast where all your dreams come true. And Tom, I know most of your dreams have already come true, so we'll reserve this for Sean. But we have Tom and Sean Fox on the podcast today from CM Profit Group. They are advisors to suppliers and distributors on anything sales. Tom, I was trying to think how long I've known you, but it's got to be like 25 years.
Every bit of it. Yep.
And so, thank you for being on the podcast. And, there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to have you on. One is you're a good guest, Tom. We've had you. You were actually one of our first guests when we started this podcast, like during COVID 5 years ago.
I remember that. Yeah.
And also you've been around, not to point out your age, but you've been in the industry a long time. You started at G. Heilman. I don't even know if a lot of our listeners know who G. Heilman is, but my father was one of the last exclusive G. Heilman distributors in the country.
Right.
In the 80s. They were Pabst before Pabst was Pabst, is basically,
right.
If we had to, describe. They were at one time like the third largest brewery in the country, maybe even the second at one time. And so you've been around a while, and I feel like you've seen it all. I started in the industry in 91, which was the first down year we had in the industry in decades. Mm-hmm. That was because of the doubling of the federal excise tax. And I remember I joined a beer distributorship, and he goes, ever since you joined, we've been down.
Coincidence? I don't think so.
Or not. But, what we're seeing in 2025 is the worst beer trends I have seen since then. And so I wanted to kind of get you guys' perspective. But before we get into that, Tom, can you tell me, first of all, what you do and how you help folks? And then secondly, talk a little bit about your new deal with Countermeasures Corp.
Yeah.
Austin Sawyer's outfit out of Nashville, and how that works together.
Yeah, no, thank you. And just for purposes of introduction, so Harry, I do go back a long way. And technically, it was when I joined the Stroh Brewery Company in 1996, they had just bought G. Heilman. And so I had worked for an AB distributor before that. Then I worked for Miller for a few years. My dad, oh, by the way, worked 40 years at Stroh's, started off at their city-owned distributorship, and then worked his way up, from a district manager all the way to VP of sales. My hero, absolutely my hero. He got me into the business, and then it's thrilling to have the third generation. I know you're with your family history as well. It's kind of cool to have Sean on and join our company and kind of be the next generation in the industry. So, and I'll let Sean introduce himself in a sec, but in terms of what we do, there are three things that we do that we really believe add a lot of value, both to distributors and suppliers. And the first thing we do is we've conducted research, Harry, almost from the day we started, to get an idea from the retail community in terms of what their expectations are from a service perspective, and then what suppliers and which distributors are really, meeting or exceeding those expectations. And, and what that's provided me was, a lot of gaps that the industry might have from the customer's perspective. So we've been doing sales training, leadership training, key account, category management training. A lot of it's based on what the gaps that these retailers and operators have provided for us over the years. They're giving the industry a report card so we can see, do they need more help analytically? Are they need more help with, RFPs or whatever the case might be? It's been a great way to kind of stay relevant. I've been fortunate, Harry, at a couple of your conferences to actually announce some of the winners to the research.
Spoiler alert, it's Gallo. I mean, Tamron does a good job, and a lot of people put a lot of focus on the Tamron survey of how wholesalers feel about suppliers, but really, it's the retailers who count. I view your survey as very important, and what are we doing here anyway, if not for the retailer?
Right. No, you're right. And listen, I think the Tamron work is amazing. And to be very honest with you, Lori and Greg back in the day, when we got, when Carol Breedlove, my initial partner in '99 when we started, she and I looked at what Tamron was doing. We said, hey, we are really retail focused, but wouldn't it be great if we could have the voice of the retailer saying what the industry does well, what they don't do well, which would really kind of complement what Tamron did. So we've always been really good friends with them. Never felt like we were competitors, probably competing with them on budget stuff. But in terms of what we both deliver, we think the world of their deliverable, and both Mike and Lori are amazing. So
Agreed. And Sean, do you regret getting into the beer industry so far?
I do not. It's been a lot of fun to get a chance to work with family. My career, when I graduated back in 2013, I started with a company called Accenture, the old Arthur Andersen. So by way of acquisition, they grew to, I left in 2018, gosh, almost 7,000 employees.
So this is after Enron.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, it was. So I went from essentially a 700,000 person company to, it's two of Tom's original partners had retired kind of right as I came on, to like a 4 or 5 person company. So it was almost night and day experience, but it's been an absolute blast.
It's a different industry. I know that every industry, you go to the plastics conference and they all think they're special, but the beer industry really is different. And it's a small industry, meaning that if you know about 200 people, then you pretty much know everybody that makes decisions. And, and that's what's cool about it. Are sales reps lazy now? Like, what's the difference between a sales rep now, other than they're on their phones all the time, than a sales rep, say, 10 years ago?
Well, I can only go back, and you probably can relate to this as well, Harry. So I can go back to the 80s when I worked for an AB distributor sales rep. And listen, I worked for a very good company, the Sieg family, in Charlottesville, Virginia. It was a great place to start. I was a Detroit city kid moving to Charlottesville out in the middle of the country. And, city boy got kicked out of a lot of accounts because my assertive, northern approach didn't necessarily work well in rural Virginia, but it was great learning. So your question is an interesting one. I think that sales reps have been well-intended, hardworking, for as long as I have been in it, which now you're looking at 40 plus years. Today, I don't see a huge difference. You say the word lazy. I just think they have, and again, this is an issue I think our industry has to answer for. And it's so funny, other industries don't really have this as an issue, but culturally, our industry has never really valued professional selling skills, and I'm not sure I understand why. When you go back, Harry, in your days at the distributor, were you asking for favors, or were you incorporating empathy and professional selling stories and poise and confidence when you got an objection, or did you just go, hey, do me a favor, we're buddies?
Do me a favor, we're buddies, and and mostly the favor was, can I throw these empty boxes in your dumpster, please, so I don't have to stick them in my van. I mean,
yeah. So I can't necessarily explain why, when you think about leadership, and we've got some amazing leaders in our industry, but for reasons that are sometimes hard to explain, why are they tolerating, their middle managers accepting what we would call relationship favor-based selling, especially when you have every distributor that we would ever work with, no one likes the declines. The declines are, the sea of red we're seeing right now. No one wants that, but there's still a ton of demand for the category, and a ton of demand really within every segment. Now we've got our growth engines, but even craft, which, is still a pretty sizable chunk of the industry. Yes. Are we happy? It's declining? Of course not. But the point is, if you work for a distributor or a supplier, there's a lot of value that you can still sell. And again, for reasons that leaders have to answer for, why are we not developing them and supporting them in a way where we can have them have Harry, I think the industry is comprised of two kinds of salespeople. One, where the light bulb's gone off, where they understand that it's about helping the customer, helping them with progress for the category, selling the value of the demand of the product, or 95%, which hasn't had that light bulb go on, and they are asking for favors, and it hasn't changed. So when you say, hey, how is it different 10 or even 40 years ago? I'm afraid it hasn't changed much at all. And I think we have to look in the mirror. Do you agree
Right.
or disagree?
No, I totally agree. And, and I think a lot of that has to do with the way people are promoted in this industry. You normally start as a merchandiser or a driver. And so you start in a different skill set, and then
Right.
you get promoted to a sales rep. And if you don't get any training between those two steps, then you're just kind of doing what you've always done. I
Yeah, and
mean,
listen, and I think right now the industry, you're seeing a lot of companies right sizing. They're eliminating positions, and you understand that. But culturally, people are the greatest asset. The brands are a great asset, but the people are the greatest asset. And to not support them, and again, if you're numbers focused and that's all you care about, you don't care about culture, you don't really care about developing people. It's easy to take times like these and go, "Hey, we got to hunker down. We're cutting." I've got clients here that are cutting out travel budgets right now, and training's getting canceled because, hey, we can't afford to send our people. We got to hold on to whatever EBIT we can. You get it, but at the same time, culturally, this is when you lean in and support the folks, because when we come out of this, and we're going to come out of this, are you going to be limping as a way to kind of get back into it, or are you going to be hitting the ground running? And I'm afraid a lot of companies are not handling those leadership obligations.
yeah, I totally agree with you. And to your point about travel budgets, I did notice that you also have a digital component
Yeah.
to your training. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so you mentioned countermeasures. So Sean and I, we had a system called the Fox Selling System, which was built like 9 years ago, and it was a great mousetrap. We were really proud of it. But in the last year, with technology emerging, some of the AI elements, Harry, are absolutely mind blowing. And so we launched the Fox Sales Academy in December, and we have had a great launch. And despite the challenges of the industry, it's an affordable way to put your team in a position where they can have 365 24/7 opportunities to access a sales process, opportunities to practice scorecarding, other sales enablement stuff. And it's the future. I mean, I really love getting up in front of groups, and I think there's going to still be demand for that. But more and more and more, the digital solutions are absolutely the future. And what has exploded that beyond anything we could have comprehended, I'll let Sean get into it, is this AI element, which now allows for people to practice. It's, and role plays, Harry, have never been fun for any, participant in a training class to have to get through. They're
Outside the bedroom,
awkward.
sure.
They're awkward. They're embarrassing. But if you can do those with AI, and we've got this AI role play and coaching tool, Sean, maybe if you don't mind, why don't you just walk Harry through it? Because a lot of people haven't become familiar with the technology and what it allows people to do. And then there's no excuse why you wouldn't be able to support an employee and put them on a path to not just get trained, but start to form habits, which we think is the absolute goal. Shawnee, go ahead.
Yeah, so essentially, we went out and partnered with a company called Big Tin Can, and they are a sales enablement and content hub kind of technology leader. So some of the cool use cases, there's a spirits company that is working on the platform with Big Tin Can that is using it as a content hub. So think about all their sell sheets and documentation and playbooks and processes. They've uploaded this into the platform. And I saw an instance that this company, someone took a picture at a large hotel casino out in Las Vegas, and it through AI was able to map, hey, does this meet our back bar standards? And AI within 2 seconds comes out with a grading scale on 5 criteria of 1 through 10, and gave them, I think it was an 8.9. So in that instance,
Pretty good.
the national account manager that's responsible for that
Ooh.
chain,
Wow. So
obviously
you
was
could
meeting those
just take
scores, but
you take a picture of the bottles on the back bar and say, "Hey, is this representative of what, we're going for?" That's
exactly.
amazing.
And it's based on the content that you upload. So it's not necessarily kind of public in one of those large language models like an OpenAI, but it's kind of a private AI instance where it's just their environment. You're not training anything at a macro level. And even just instances of, hey, if you wanted to incorporate AI through another example of, hey, I'm about to call in this corner bar. I live here in Chicago. This account's typically focused on driving more foot traffic. What are some, if I'm a distributor, what are some of the, SKUs right now or products that I should consider pitching? And it'll pull up, if this account's focused on spirits or they're focused on features during happy hour, hey, here are the top 3 things we would pitch based on, trends and volume right now in this specific zip code. So that part is really, really cool in terms of the power of what AI is even doing just to equip sales reps to be that much more, fact-based when they're selling at accounts. But even this role play AI conversational tool that the technology has that we've got a few distributors and craft brewers utilizing today, you can customize these scenarios of, hey, here's what we're trying to get accomplished. We've already got, say, our IPA in the cold box at this account, but we also want to get in our hazy. We're trying to sell it to an on-premise account, and you can utilize these different buyer communication styles. So the exact same scenario of, hey, this account's foot traffic is down and they're really focused on profit. If I use the buyer communication style of, say, a disgruntled critic or a direct negotiator, that role play scenario that might be 3, 5, 10, 20 minutes with an AI, agent or bot that you're communicating with, it's going to be a lot more difficult for, some of the teams that we're working with today. Their teams maybe in the Northeast are dealing with some of those disgruntled critics or the direct negotiator, but maybe some of their sales reps are going to go through that same scenario in the Midwest with the enthusiastic engager, just for instance.
Right.
And again, you can do it for distributor scenarios, but when we think about how often is the industry practicing or, developing their skills through these role play scenarios, it's few and far in between. A lot of times they're awkward. People don't like getting up in front of their peers. So the fact that you can do it directly from your phone or your computer with no one else watching, you also, once you submit it, can get graded by what we call the Fox Virtual Coach, essentially where we can customize the criteria of, hey, we want the handling objections aspect of this 5-minute role play to be worth 60% of the overall grading. This virtual coach, again, in 1 to 2 seconds provides grading, but then your manager can also get an email of, hey, Sean just completed a 5-minute, 42-second role play. You can click on that button. It takes you right into the platform for the manager to then also listen to that recording, see the transcript, and then ultimately provide their feedback for kind of that 360 loop. So to think about where technology is taking us and the incorporation of AI for this industry, specifically for the development of sales teams, and also how it can be a tool for managers, it's been incredible over the last year and a half just to be able to offer this to the industry.
I really didn't understand the digital side of what y'all are doing until now, and that it seems very scalable. Whereas, Tom, I mean, you had to get diamond status on Delta Airlines because you had to go everywhere to
Right.
do this. Whereas these tools allow you to kind of get your knowledge out there and scale. And I would imagine like you could take a picture of a cold box in a convenience store and the zip code and say, hey, is this set right for this part of town? Like, are there gaps here? Yeah, right.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is crazy.
And that's something that that wasn't possible. I don't even think like 3 or 4 years ago.
No.
But Harry, even think about it this way: what if a distributor was trying to court some of these emerging suppliers, whether it's the THC stuff or any RTD, and they want to showcase their capabilities as a distributor? Can you imagine if you went to that supplier and said, "Hey, before we launch your brand, through AI, everyone in our sales department is going to get a chance. There's going to be a KPI of 10 opportunities for them to practice the sales pitch before we hit the street. So starting day one, we're not just like, hey, this is the shiny new toy. We're going to be highly skilled." We've talked to suppliers and they said if a distributor did that for us, they would get the nod, because we know that a lot of times distributors are not necessarily brand builders. They're logistics, and they're, and suppliers have to do a lot of the work. But if a distributor leaned into it and said, no, you come to us, this is how good we're going to be and how we're going to represent your products. I mean, how would someone compete against that?
Right. Do you get a little bit, just knowing distributors like I do, is there a little bit of pushback of, I don't trust AI, technology, it's relationships? You get a little.
And it's not even just distributors. There are suppliers that are concerned, and I think a lot of it's based on what Sean said. There's concern that, hey, is a lot of the stuff I put out there going to get redacted, or is it public information? People are, highly concerned about that. But with our technology partner, we've got absolute bona fide, and Shawnee, you probably can get into this more. There's protection of what you're feeding in. It's not out to the OpenAI or ChatGPT. It is something that you would educate on your end, and it is not for public knowledge. Is that accurate, Sean?
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, all AI is incorporating one of the large language models, but this is a AI layer specifically within the technology, so it's not allowed to legally train the larger models. And any supplier that was customizing these instances or uploading their processes and documentation and playbooks of, hey, here's our standards for merchandising or here's our standards for the back bar. If it was training any of those large language models, none of them would sign up for it. So that protection is an absolute must. And there certainly is some still apprehension because I think AI, even compared to 18 or 24 months ago, it's a little bit more normal. I think, a lot of the new computers have Copilot if you've got a Microsoft device or, people trying to figure out how to, slow cook ribs. A lot of times it's, jumping on ChatGPT and the free versions that they have. So I think it's slowly becoming a little bit more of the norm. But some of the companies that, I followed, I've got some friends from college that kind of work in the AI space even more so than we do. The investments of where AI is about to go in the next 1, 2, 3 years, it's hard to even fathom. But I almost equate it to, and I don't know if this is a good analogy. You remember when those portable DVD players came out like 20 years ago? I remember my older brother saved up for, gosh, it was probably almost a year. And it was $800 to purchase one of those DVD players that he could, throw in the car and put his headphones on for a 4-hour car ride to Northern Michigan or down to Cleveland to see family. 2, 3 years later, those things were like $59. Just the technology and how they're.
And now they're free. I think they give them away.
Right.
They're trying to get rid of them.
I just would think, who knows where AI is about to take us, but shame on us if we're not going to at least try to understand where it could potentially add value and make our lives easier and more efficient.
Right. Okay. And how did you guys end up partnering with Countermeasures in Austin and their crew? And if you don't, Austin, and if just to to our listeners who don't know who they are, Austin Sawyer, formerly grew up in the AB system in Nashville, worked for J.R. Hand, and started a company which was a brilliant idea, I think, to provide shared selling services for suppliers so that you don't have to do all of that building a whole network around the country yourself. You can pay for this service, and they do a lot of sales and merchandising and a lot of other stuff too, but it's shared services.
Yeah, and Sean, I'll just start this off, but you can kind of finish the more recent day. But when we had the legacy Fox selling system, Austin and Seth wanted their teams to be developed. They didn't want to just have feet on the street or just these field sales shared services. District managers, if you will, they wanted them to be highly trained, that they would say, listen, you're not just hiring us just to put a warm body in place. They saw the value of really developing their people to be better than what a lot of suppliers could put in if they had to do it themselves, and certainly a lot more reasonable in terms of the price. So we've known them as a client for 5 years. And then when we launched Fox Sales Academy, we had a lot of conversations with them, and they're like, listen, we really think this could benefit all of our clients and a lot of the distributors that we call on. And so because they saw the value, and we have a decent network, but it is pales in comparison to theirs. So it's going to be a great way for us to continue to get more introductions, and they've got some skin in the game on their end. And so, and again, from a purposeful or holistic standpoint, we really believe, our academy is going to help a client close more sales, help with culture, help with retention, all these things that a lot of companies, whether it's supplier or distributor, are struggling with. And so we just kind of launched that partnership back in the spring, and we're thrilled and delighted to be working with them. And we know they're buddies of yours as well. So we're big fans as well.
Yeah, I spent a week with Austin one night in Miami. We ran into 50 Cent.
Oh gosh!
Just to give you the fact that we were hanging out in the same club as 50 Cent will tell you how much fun we were having. I had to interview Pete Coors the next morning at 8 a.m. on stage, and
oh my God!
He goes, "God, you smell like shit," and I go, "So do you." I know you were out late too, Pete. Don't front, my friend.
Well, the few times we've had beers with Seth and Austin, I can tell you the next morning hasn't been hasn't been pleasant.
Yeah.
I can tell you
Well,
that.
JR was with us too. So at least we had somebody to foot the bill.
There you go.
Like I said at the beginning of this podcast, it's just been a rough year for everybody, and nobody can point fingers. It's not like you can say, well, this supplier, that. Everybody, beer, wine, and spirits, they're all down 5%. It doesn't matter who you are, you're down at least 5%. And so, do you view this, Tom, as a structural deal? Is this a new normal, or is this transitory? And we're going to, is this a COVID hangover, or is this going to come
I think
back?
there's a little bit of that COVID hangover. Some of the numbers I think you were pointing out that Bump published a couple of his editions back, where he was looking at like just the explosion of what COVID did when no one was traveling, everyone was home and pantries were full. I mean, numbers were just stupid, 25% increases. Now that we're kind of settling back to those numbers, and I think even, not Bart, but God, he's a good buddy of mine, the NBWA.
Lester.
Lester.
Yeah.
He even came back and said, "Hey, listen, let's not overreact here." So, listen, I think there will be kind of a reset that we would probably not want to factor in some of those explosive COVID years, but it's impossible to not understand what's going on from a consumer standpoint with regard to healthy flavor, all of those intersections that the consumer. It's a lot different than what you and I would have grown up with. We didn't have any of that zest for good for you or the flavor explosion, but that seems to be here to stay. So the companies that can innovate, and listen, let's be honest. I mean, innovation is it 5 or 10% of the industry every year? So there's a lot of demand for that. We can't forget the core, but I think the companies that manage the core, but also have some level of success with their innovation are the ones that are going to be the ones that thrive. And you can start to see, and some of the startups like the Surfsides and others who are just exploding. Right. You got to give them a lot of credit, but I think the industry still got a lot of opportunity. You just got to be nimble, and I think you got to lean into your most important asset, your people.
Right, and I would also throw price in there. I think we got in a little over our skis on price increases.
The Outlaw podcast was fascinating, Harry, about what he had to say about price. That was fascinating.
Who is that?
Your podcast with Ari. It was Outlaw.
Oh yeah, Ari. Yeah. That
was fascinating.
It will be interesting to check in with him in 12 months and see if his hypothesis works out. Because like I pointed out to him, I go, so let me get this straight. Your business model is the more beer you sell, the more money you lose. I just want to get this. I haven't heard this before. And but you got to get shares some way, and if you can buy it, then buy it.
It's an interesting situation, because you're right. I mean, the fast nickel, if it's not profitable, and listen, there are companies that understand the whole bottom line a hell of a lot better than I do. But I was fascinated to hear what he had to say, and I can only imagine if he does have some success, the industry's they're gonna have to respond. They're gonna have to respond to it.
Yeah, I think so. Do you guys do you just still do your retailer survey?
Yeah.
Okay.
We are working closely with the Vibe conference. So the Vibe conference, you're familiar with Vibe. You usually you report on it. So that on-premise convention, if you will, probably 5 or 6 years ago, Sean, we started partnering, and they were using Technomics as a vehicle to do their supplier awards, if you will. And listen, Technomics does a lot of things for the industry, but that was something they did as a favor to Vibe. It's what we do. And so for a couple of years, it took a little bit for us to network in to say, this is what we do. And we would be happy to be on stage. But, instead of interviewing 15 or 20 operators, we can interview 70 or 80. And so the cross section around all these different on-premise channels, plus all these marquee operators, we have a wonderful methodology to get in touch with them, and the Vibe conference has given us a ton of credibility to get these phone calls returned. And so now that particular part of our business is as healthy as it's ever been. Sean has taken it kind of under his wing, and has been speaking at the conference in San Diego the last 3 years. But it provides a great opportunity for all of these national account departments for the on-premise to understand from their customer, are you meeting their expectations, and how are you doing versus your competition? It's a report card, and it's a very important part of our business, a very important part.
I remember historically it was, Boston Beer and Gallo were always kind of the standouts. Is that still the case?
They both do very, very well. But Sean, you can kind of go through, and with Vibe, I mean, we look at beer, wine, and spirits separately, but within each of those categories, we're also looking at, just to kind of keep, the apples to apples comparisons. We have large, medium, and small. And Gallo and Boston still do very well, but Sean can speak to a couple others that have really come on and providing some great service.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of as Tom mentioned, it's kind of been my main responsibility or job, if you will, throughout the year, going through this interview process. So the interviews typically start just after Thanksgiving and then run until early February. The conference at Vibe in San Diego is typically the last weekend of February or in early March. And for the last number of years, we've been interviewing about 70 operators. These interviews are 100% anonymous and confidential. So no one's ever going to be able to kind of pull back on, hey, specifically, this is what that chain or this outlet mentioned. But in terms of kind of the overall impression, which is the criteria utilized for the Vibe Supplier Awards, the top performers, companies that are still performing very strong, absolutely Gallo and Boston Beer. But another one is Bacardi USA. They've been really strong. We can walk through some of the competencies that we go through, but what really stands out for Bacardi is specifically their data and insights capabilities that stand out really above the rest in the industry. Some other top performers, Campari Group, Jackson Family Wines, Sazerac, and Copper Cane. Those companies performed very strong in that on-premise report this year. And then in terms of some suppliers that showed significant improvement, really over the last 24, if not 12 months, on the beer side includes Sierra Nevada. Anheuser-Busch showed some really strong improvement from 24 to 25. Constellation Beer. On the wine side, Treasury performed very strong this year and improved. I think some of that may have been with the acquisition that they made, which has been received very well. Again, Copper Cane showed strong improvement. They've got a little bit of a smaller team, but the accounts that they are calling on, they're doing a really nice job in exceeding expectations. Also, Deutsch and Delicato showed really strong improvement from 24. And then on the spirit side, in terms of improvement, Proximo and Pernod Ricard, very strong numbers and improvement versus last year, as well as Sazerac and Brown-Forman. So probably threw out a number of names there. But
Harry, another company too, New Belgium. 5 years ago, they were hardly on the radar. And in the last 4 years, they are in a dead heat, with Boston. They've done unbelievably well. And you got to give them a lot of credit.
And the numbers, their numbers show it.
Sure do.
A lot of private companies you guys are rattling off, I've noticed. I sometimes wonder if private companies like Sazerac, have an edge because they don't have to, they can invest without worrying about quarterly earnings. But that's another topic. Like, are there any watchouts for the industry that occurred to you that you've been thinking about, or?
Well, Sean can get into some of the competencies. I do have a watch out that's more of a bigger picture, and it's just about culture. I would implore the leaders of our industry to understand your obligation is more than just the top and bottom line. Your job is culture and making sure the environment and the support you're providing, your most important asset, is taken care of, and also developing people. You can't just spend every minute of every day looking at the numbers. I know that's what we're all focused on, and that's never going to go away. But to have the discipline to understand what are we doing and how is it affecting the culture, plus, from a people's asset standpoint, are you providing them with the direction and the support that they need? And if you look in the mirror, there's probably there is a lot of opportunities. But even beyond that, Sean, there are some specific competencies, I think, that we would say our research has pointed out, maybe some watchouts.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 9 different competencies or strategic services, essentially, that we also measure beyond that overall impression question. Understanding the retailer or operator strategies, tactics, and goals, the ability to partner, the RFP process in the on-premise, data and insights, business reviews. One that really stands out that's jumped up the ranks, and I probably correlates to some of the COVID lockdowns from a number of years ago, is really follow up and execution. And I think a lot of that has to do with distributor alignment. So even during the RFP process, I think there are a lot of suppliers that the operator community, at least in the on-premise side, is asking for the suppliers to incorporate the entire execution plan, or once a program is live, ensuring that every outlet has all necessary ingredients. But Harry, it's actually really interesting. One of the questions, and we kind of didn't necessarily measure specific to any supplier this year, but as the interviews ended, I thought it might be fun to kind of throw in a hypothetical question of, hey, essentially, if we could wave a magic wand, fast forward 3 to 5 years from now, and ask the supplier community in general at mass to improve upon something, to fix something, to stop doing something, to start doing something, almost a very open-ended question of, hey, what should we be watching out for over the next 3 to 5 years? And some of those, the verbatim commentary that came back, I think everyone that participated in the interview process had at least a phrase, if not 4, 5, 6, 7 sentences to provide, just in terms of, hey, we're all in this together, and this is kind of what we're worried about or focused on. Again, these interviews happened a number of months ago, but I think some of the clarity or uncertainty around potential tariff implications, a lot of the sales process and pitches and through the RFP process can oftentimes be felt as generic as opposed to customized. So way beyond just putting that, account's logo on the first page. But if there's an RFP process, not flipping your entire book on a 60-page presentation, but hey, specifically for the RFP process here, we're looking for a Riesling. Don't come pitch me a tequila or your newest innovation, for instance, for a company that might be in all categories and IPA. Again, that execution and distributor alignment is really important. Thinking outside the box, but at the end of the day, following directions during that RFP process in the on-premise, and then really just trying to incorporate as much customized data as we can as a supplier community to help buyers make informed strategic decisions specifically for the on-premise. I know in the on-premise, a lot of the operators felt a sentiment of, hey, a lot of data that's given to us is either off-premise focused or there's no source attributed to that. It came through kind of one of the themes this year of, hey, if I listen to every single supplier that came in here, they've all got the number one IPA or the number one cab or the number one, tequila, for instance, if you break it down to one specific zip code in that state. So I think just some of the maybe fatigue that the operator community is receiving on the data side in terms of how can we provide data that is specific to the on-premise, and also not treating the on-premise like or at least a lot of the travel accounts, like a purebred testing ground. It certainly can be an awesome testing ground to understand, hey, is this going to apply or is there going to be some fuel around this in the off-premise? But they don't necessarily want to be that guinea pig all the time to be kind of the first one out there. But at the same time, towing that line with, hey, keeping up with Gen Z trends and millennials and new flavors and ingredients. So those were some of the themes that came through on that, what we call the state of the future question.
Right. I think COVID accelerated this kind of thinking that the on-premise is kind of the tail on the dog. And you see suppliers now reawakening to the fact of how important the on-premise channel is to this industry. Mm-hmm. And I know, I've had recent conversations with a CEO of a top brewery who specifically said 2026 is going to be the year that we are going to refocus our efforts on the on-premise. And is there anything else you guys want to add? This has been fascinating. I'm so glad that we
thank you
reconnected, Tom, last week. We reconnected on another topic, and I was like, you need to come on the podcast because
it means a lot.
Yeah, you guys are doing the Lord's work out there.
Thank you.
Sales training has always kind of been an afterthought in this industry, and like you said, that's not true in most other industries. My friends who sell software or other services, they spend an inordinate amount of time of their year in training, and it kind of boggles the mind why we kind of just beer sells itself. Well, not anymore. Apparently.
Not anymore. No.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies get it. I mean, a lot get it, and we're trying to get people thinking about their obligation to culture and to put them in a position to say, listen, when you really think about it, how much, should we be investing in our people? And, a lot get it, but there's still a big opportunity. The only thing I want to say, I'm looking at the numbers here. One company we didn't mention that has done very, very well. And this is even despite some of the trends I know they're not necessarily happy with. Molson Coors has, and I give them a lot of credit. They've done very well. And I worked at Miller, and, we were selling negative trends 25 years ago. and it was a situation where great brands, but growing has always been a challenge. And yet their morale, their service, you got to give them a lot of credit. I mean, they have still stood up there and had to answer the tough questions, but they do it with a smile and they do it with good ideas.
That's funny you say that, because I was talking to Jen the other day and I was like, why are these people at Molson Coors so happy all the time? What do they have to be happy about? And in fact, all of our beer editors are in Phoenix right now at the Miller sales meeting. So we'll get a taste in the next day or so of what their plans are. Of course, Gavin's retiring at the end of the year. So it's kind of a good time, I think, for them to reset the table.
Yeah.
And, refire up their innovation engines, if you will. So, well, listen, gentlemen, the Fox boys, if I can call you that. It's great to meet you, Sean, on BeerNet Radio. We're going to have you back. We're not going to wait 5 years anymore. We're going to at least once a year. Tom, we'll have you on to get updates on this, because I think it's important. So thanks for being on BeerNet Radio. I want to remind everybody that tickets are on sale for the Beer, Wine, and Spirits Summit in January. Go to beernet.com. And Tom, we're already booked this year, but remind me, we're going to get you guys back on stage at some point.
Would love it. Would love it, my man.
All right. Take care. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.